What's up, guys? Jake with TNTown. Got another special video for you today. I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's been brought up a lot on my channel. A lot of people have been asking, what is the deal with rare breed triggers and why do they get so much hate? So I wanted to kind of go into this topic today with you guys and just talk about my perspective and what I've seen, and trying to shed some light on all of this for those that may not be really in the know. You make your own decision. This is all alleged, by the way. This is all very alleged. I'm not a lawyer. I am not anyone involved in any of these lawsuits or work for any of these companies. I'm just an idiot on the internet. And this is my understanding of why people are not really happy with rare breed triggers. So I first heard about rare breed triggers back in 2020, back when the Covfefe was hitting, and they had announced and shown off a new idea, a trigger called a forced reset trigger, and they were taking orders for it, and it was just a 2-position trigger, safe or forced reset. There was no semi-auto. So they released it, and it was, I think, like $350 at the time, and they claimed it was fine. Of course, a few months later, in that same year, they got a knock on the ATF store. They got a knock on their door by the ATF claiming, hey, this is a machine gun. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the story. They basically argued that it wasn't. They showed their patents that they had from before, and they eventually settled with the ATF, with the federal government, whoever it was, Pam Bondi, Trump's administration. They eventually came to a settlement where they would be allowed to continue producing the rare breed FRT trigger. And this settlement, the ATF admitted that the trigger did not count as a machine gun. Okay, this is important. They admitted that the trigger does not make the firearm a machine gun. So they said that rare breed could actually, in fact, go ahead and continue selling their forced reset trigger design. Okay, you guys know, while this was all going on in court, other companies such as Big Daddy Unlimited with their wide open trigger, a bunch of forced reset designs were hitting the market, coming out, that were like literally exact, identical duplicate copies of the rare breed trigger. While this was also going on in court, there were some other designs out there, and one that is very popular and well known is the Super Safety. Now, this was actually invented in 2022 by a gentleman named Tim Hoffman, which he actually studied the original patents from 2003 and got the idea to create the Super Safety design based on old, prior, expired patents. These were considered prior art at this point, according to legal definitions. So he created his Super Safety design, which is a push button safety, and essentially allowed the end user to do safe, semi-auto, as well as what he calls a super safe mode that essentially allows it to do a force reset similar pattern as well through different means. Now, Mr. Tim Hoffman, Hoffman Tactical, he did not choose to patent this design. He did not want to patent it. He did not want to sell it. He wanted to put it out there for people to create on their own. You could 3D print it. You could CNC machine it if you want to, which a lot of companies have started doing over the years. Meanwhile, Rare Breed, I think at some point during this back and forth with the federal government, eventually at some point, Rare Breed did actually pursue a lawsuit with Hoffman Tactical, which is, I believe, still kind of ongoing at this point. Rare Breed feels that Hoffman Tactical, with the Super Safety, was actually infringing on their patent. Okay, I'm going to just take up the whole screen with this. So this is the original patent from 2003. This is expired, okay? This is from long ago. This is not created by Rare Breed, but this was from a Mr. Blakely here. Okay, but you get the idea. It demonstrates how, it's kind of hard to see here. You've got your trigger here and the lines. You've got this little lever. Okay, you see there's the bolt carrier there. You see this is kind of in the firing position, right? Okay, that's up. That's actually pulled forward and hit. When the bolt carrier goes back, it hits here on this lever, much like the rear breech force reset trigger does, and causes this to disable. Okay, as it goes back here, this starts coming forward, the bolt carrier, it catches this lever here, and then as it comes forward, bring the bolt carrier forward, it pulls this whole thing forward, swiveling it forward, unlocking, and this is what the actual Rare Breed trigger design is based on. The actual Rare Breed force reset trigger design is. Okay, could this actually work, this thing that he's got here? I don't know, because you see like there's this whole other piece back here. So this isn't exactly like the Rare Breed force reset trigger. It's what the Rare Breed force reset trigger was based on. Okay, you see there's more of it there in the back, going up here, fitting in this space down here. A lot different than what we see with the cassette style trigger that Rare Breed has come out with. Okay, so that's number one. That is kind of what the original patent looked like. The patent that Rare Breed actually does use is this one here. This is from Wolf Tactical. Wolf Tactical actually sold this patent to Rare Breed triggers. Now this is a date of December 24th, 2019. This looks a lot more like what you see with the Rare Breed trigger. It's got the little lever thing there. It's all built in together. And this is all just pertaining to how this little lever thing works, how it goes back here. It's got the spring here. It locks this in. It gives you some close-up designs here. This is actually a side angle. It's a little bit hard to see there. But then you see here as the bolt carrier comes forward, it's actually going to hit that little lever, unlocking the trigger to come forward, hitting the firing pin. You guys should be familiar with this. Okay, so the main idea of this was they were essentially patenting this right here. This is the Rare Breed patent. This whole setup here, all of this. Okay, notice that this is just there's no three positions here. Okay, this is two position, or rather it's just talking about all of this right here. Okay, this is all about the locking bar, basically locking the firing control unit, all this stuff. Okay, as you guys are familiar with already with how the Rare Breed trigger works. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Okay, right here. So Rare Breed later on came out with another patent. Now this one is the one that is up for contention. Okay, this is where, if I can make this larger and show you here, this is the one. Now the inventor says, of course, Blakely. This is the one of contention, July 16, 2024. A trigger mechanism that can be used in our firearms. It has a hammer, a trigger member, a disconnector, a cam, and a 3-position safety selector having safe, standard, semi-automatic, and force reset semi-automatic positions. This is when they created the 3-position and actually patented it. Okay, see that there? And this is where they're talking about the 3 positions and how it allows for a safe, a semi-auto, and a force reset. You guys with me so far? See how this cam is different now? Okay, this right here, this is important. This is where the lawsuit comes in play. Keep in mind, this 3-position system, it came out when? July 16th, 2024. Okay, and it's all about this 3-position system, this whole 3-position system like this. And it goes in more detail and so on. And it has these different little flaps. You see that? These different little cam levels essentially that allows it to either catch this piece or to allow it to basically run freely into the force reset mode. So the next thing I want to bring to your attention is the actual settlement agreement, okay? The settlement agreement was between the ATF and Rare Breed Triggers, Rare Breed Firearms LLC, and the terms of the agreement were that they would dismiss the case altogether, that the ATF would have to return FRTs to all the people that they confiscated them from. Let's see, lots of different things here. The main thing that we need to look at, though, that Lawrence DeMonico and Mr. Maxwell agreed to take all reasonable efforts to engage in patent enforcement, seeking prohibitory injunctions against any person or entity that manufactures, sells, or distributes any FRT during the life of U.S. patent number 105142223. This is extremely important because the patent here that we're talking about is this one, 223. This is this patent right here. You know, the safe or force reset patent that we talked about? This is the one. This is the one that they have to enforce. Their cassette style patent. It has nothing to do with the 3-position safety selector. It just has to do with this locking mechanism built in here that allows the bolt carrier group to reset and travel, and as it comes back into home, it will hit that locking piece, unlocking the trigger to fire again. This is the patent that they have to enforce. Now, going back to the agreement here, that they have to essentially try to enforce that patent going after people copying their design. Their original design, that cassette style trigger. You guys with me? Now, I know this gets confusing, but this design was what they were selling you in 2020 when it first came out, and then the GATF quickly confiscated them. This design. There was no 3-position design out there at all. The reason why this is important is because the whole reason why Rare Breed is going after Hoffman Tactical and the Super Safety is for this patent, the contention patent, the 3-position patent that allows 3 different positions: safe, semi-auto, and super safe, or really, in Rare Breed's case, force reset. And I'll let you hear it for yourself from Mr. Tim Hoffman himself. All right, so check this out. This is where he does a really good job explaining it. Better than I can, honestly.
Because this one is the actual active reset mode, which is a little more relevant.
Keep in mind, he's reading this off of patent 247 that came out in 2024, okay? This is the patent that they're using to go after Hoffman Tactical, patent ending in number 247.
But it says, in force reset semi-automatic position, rearward, which is the position of their selector, rearward movement of the bolt carrier causes rearward pivoting of said hammer and pivoting of said cam from said first position to said second position, such that said cam lobe forces said trigger member to said second position. And then this is the important part, said safety selector preventing said disconnector hook from catching said hammer hook. And then it just finishes up by describing how any AR-15 would work.
So basically, it's all about that 3-position safety selector that they have now available.
They're claiming here is that they have a cam that's resetting the trigger, like the original Blakely patent, and then they're adding this mechanism which disables the disconnector to make it select fire. That's what this patent covers, and that's what they're claiming here. Now, many months, almost a year after the Super Safety was released, 8 new claims were added via an amendment to this patent. Now, you can do this because you can add new claims later to a patent with the intent of narrowing the scope of the patent. If your claims weren't specific enough, you can make them more specific later. One thing you can't do is you cannot add claim language later that expands the scope of the patent. Those claims must be supported by the original patent. Reading this patent and looking through their claim language, it in no way applies to the Super Safety. Hence, right away, we can see that there's no way you can add new claims that apply to the Super Safety, because if the original patent doesn't cover the Super Safety, which it doesn't mention anything Super Safety related as far as the new art, then the new claims can. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how these new claims have a number of issues. A lawsuit was filed back in June against a number of companies by the patent holders of the 247 patent. And this lawsuit basically lays out what they think is infringing. And what they think is infringing is not the rotation, because that's all prior art. What they're claiming is infringing is the Super Safety's method of selection. That is, the way I have 3 cams stacked up here, and I'm selecting them by clicking right and left by the user. The user clicks between safe, active reset, and passive reset. I'm literally lining up different cams with the trigger. It's super simple. It was actually my dad's idea, and it works really, really good. So that is how the Super Safety works, and they're claiming that's the infringement. Let's try to show you guys how they're claiming that. And to do that, we're going to dig into their little claim chart in the complaint from the lawsuit. And it just, this is bolt carrier. This is all the generic claims that are just talking about prior art. And then we get, here we go. This is the first definition. And in their claims, they're defining having a cam with a cam lobe movable between 2 positions. And this is, from the Blakely patent, but it's in there, and it's important because it's referenced later. And reading the patent, it's obvious that the first and second position has to do with the rotation of the cam, or the movement of the cam via the action of the bolt carrier in order to reset the trigger and not reset the trigger. So it goes forward, then unlocks it. This is what the first, so that's the second position, that's the first position. And right here in their own complaint, it shows that cam lobe in first position, it shows the Super Safety being forward, and then cam lobe in second position shows the Super Safety rearward, resetting the the trigger into its reset position, even though it doesn't show that because it's crappy CAD, but that's what they're trying to show here. So there's your first position, there's your second position. Clearly, it has to do with the cam rotating via the bolt carrier group. Those are the first 2 positions. Now, what they're alleging that the first and second position has to do with the user moving the cam side to side. They're claiming that when the force reset semi-automatic position, the cam is moved laterally to a second position. So that's what they're alleging. Right away, there's a bunch of issues with this, which we're going to break down. And I'm going to get the actual claim. Claim 20 has a bunch of prior art, talks about disconnector. It mentions having a cam right here. It mentions having the cam with the 2 different positions. This is where it defines those positions. One of them causes it to reset, one of them doesn't. There's only one way to do that, and that's via motion of the bolt carrier group. So that's their own definition right there. And then we got safety selector. And then right here, we have the important part, which is these 2 clauses right here. And this is what they're trying to use against the Super Safety. So I'm going to read you one of these clauses, and then we'll get into problems. So it says, in said standard semi-automatic position, that's the position of the selector, said cam is in said first position, which means the cam is forward. Rearward movement of the bolt carrier causes rearward pivoting of said hammer, such that said disconnector hook catches said hammer hook. Thereafter, the bolt carrier moves forward into battery, at which time the user must manually release the trigger member to free said hammer from said disconnector to permit said hammer and trigger member to pivot to said set position, so the user can pull said trigger member to fire the firearm. So what they did there is they literally just said that they just described how an AR-15 works in semi-automatic mode. It's just a verbatim description of how an AR-15 file control group works. The only thing they added was said cam is in said first position. They added that. Okay, so the cam is in said first position. It means the cam is swung forward when it starts. So the cam is forward like that. Forward like that. It hasn't been pushed to the rear yet. That's fine, right? Let's move on to the next one. In said force reset position, in the said force reset semi-automatic position, said cam is in said second position. Rearward movement of the bolt carrier causes rearward pivoting of said hammer, such that said disconnector hook is prevented from catching said hammer hook. Thereafter, the bolt carrier moves forward into battery, at which time the user can pull said trigger member to fire the firearm. This is where all the problems are. First of all, it describes nothing related to the Super Safety. It makes no reference to moving a cam side to side. It doesn't mention the user moving anything. It literally says cam is in said second position. The second position is when the Super Safety is pushed to the rear like that. At that point, the only way the cam can be in the second position is when the bolt carrier group is to the rear. So here, they're describing, and I'll even show you a picture from this to make it more clear.
It's right here.
Really, it doesn't make any sense. This is the cam in the second position. The only way to get this second position is to have a bolt carrier, this guy right here, up here, that's already moved to the rear, pushing that cam back. That is the only way to get that position. So what they're saying is their bolt carrier group is already moved to the rear, and then rearward movement of the bolt carrier causes rearward pivoting of said hammer. So they're saying the bolt carrier is already to the rear, and then the bolt carrier moves to the rear. That's non-functional. That doesn't work. So mechanically, they're describing an impossible action here. That's the first problem. So this claim is completely invalid because it's non-functional. A claim has to be functional underneath the specification. You have to be able to point to the specification and say somewhere that this is how it works. Like this moves here, this moves there. They're saying that this is here, and then this goes here. They're saying basically something does the same thing twice without ever going back. That doesn't work. So that's the first problem with this. It's just simply non-functional. The second...
Do you guys see why this is so ridiculous? So Rare is using this logic to actually go after Hoffman Tactical, and yet their patent doesn't even have the right language for them to justify suing him in the first place. It doesn't make sense. Here's another good part right here, okay? I know this is long. I'm not trying to steal his content, but people have been asking, what's the deal? Why are people mad at Rare Breed? I'm explaining it to you right now as we speak, so please just bear with me a little bit longer here.
Second problem is that it is trying to take language that means one thing and use it in a different way. And this is my favorite problem with it. They're trying to say that the cam isn't, so this is non-functional, right? But why would someone write something non-functional? That's what you're asking. I asked myself the same question. It took me a while to figure it out, and I finally did. And it's really displayed well over here in the complaint. In the complaint, it says, this is just from the patent, it says, in standard semi-automatic mode, said cam is in said first position. And then we come over here to how they think that applies to the super safety. They say, in standard semi-automatic mode, the cam is moved laterally to a first position. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say that the first and second position has to do with the cam moving laterally by the user. Clearly, the first and second position, as shown in their own complaint, has to do with the cam being rotated via the bolt carrier group or moved in some way via the bolt carrier group. It has nothing to do with the user selecting cam mode. So the fun part here is that they say right here in the complaint, it says said cam is in said first position, and then over here it says the said cam is moved to a first position. It's not the same position, not the same said position, just a position. So they're trying to take a specific movement and apply it to an unrelated movement. That's what they're trying to do here. That's my interpretation of it. So that's why this is so funky. They were trying to take the previous valid language from the patent and twist it to cover the super safety. Because they're trying to use previous language, they've opened up a huge hole here in the patent. And it says, in said force reset semi-automatic position, said cam in said second position, rearward movement of the bolt carrier causes rearward pivoting of said hammer, such that said disconnector hook is prevented from catching said hammer hook. Well, that's not how the super safety works. The super safety, when you fire the weapon in super safe mode, the hammer falls, firing the weapon. The hammer...
Okay, you guys, I'm going to stop it right there, but you know how the super safety works. At least at this point, I hope you do. It's a different design altogether. Lawrence DeMonico and Rare Breed Triggers is doing. They are going after companies like Hoffman Tactical, who, by the way, isn't selling the super safety and doesn't have a patent on it. They're going after Hoffman Tactical for this and their own patent that they are trying to use. Number one, it's not the patent that they have to even go after people on. Remember, the patent they have to go after people on is patent number 223. If we recall right here, they said, yes, Big Daddy Government, we will go after everyone that infringes on patent number 223 from their original forced reset design, the one that only has safe and forced reset mode, no semi-auto, no three position rotary safety or anything. Number one, the reason why people are mad at Rare Breed is, number one, they're going after people for a different patent altogether. They're not doing it because they have to go after someone because Big Daddy Government told them. They're voluntarily doing this themselves. Number two, their reasoning doesn't even make sense. Their own patent, their own cease and desist that they're sending out to companies like Hoffman Tactical, they don't even make sense, and they don't even line up with their own patent, patent number 247 in this case. They're using flawed reasoning and flawed logic in their very own patent lawsuits. It doesn't make sense. Now, the icing on the cake to all of this is how they are actually even implementing, delivering the cease and desist and going after these companies. And that is my last and final exhibit for you today. That is going to come from Instagram. This is actually from AS Designs, who has an arc trigger, as they call it, that uses a similar design as a super safety. Remember, super safety is not patented, so they designed a trigger that's very similar to the super safety, but uses a rotary safety. And Lawrence DeMonico decided to make an appearance here as well. So this is a little bit cut off here, unfortunately. I can just show you the whole screen here. Here you can see this is from AS Designs FRT Instagram. And what you see here is Mr. Lawrence DeMonico handing out cease and desist letters to Mr. I don't know his name, but the owner of AS Designs. I think this is one of his lawyers. That could be another lawyer back there with them. Now, why does this look bad? Okay. The reason why this looks bad is because they could have delivered these cease and desist letters a number of ways. What they did was they went to the GOA Goals event in Knoxville, Tennessee, August of this past year, 2025. They didn't just show up on like a special private day or a special media day. They showed up on the public day on Saturday or Sunday, I'm not sure which, but they showed up at a public event to these different vendors in the gun industry and started handing out cease and desist letters. So I'm glad that AS Designs had the foresight to go ahead and get a picture of this to put up on their Instagram account. Very cool. They also did to Hoffman Tactical. They did to a couple other people as well at this public event. Not a private event, not like an industry-only event, a public event like anybody could have walked in there and just hung out and got to see all kinds of cool stuff. So this is where we're at. This is why people are upset with Rare Breed triggers. Okay? As I've said before in past videos, I like the product. I think they make one of the best force reset triggers on the market. But I do not like the company and the way they choose to do things. Now, someone actually in one of my comments, somebody at some point commented that apparently they actually had to show up in person at this public event because a lot of these companies, or most of these companies, did not actually have real physical addresses when they registered their business. That's what they claimed. I don't know how true that is, which if that is true, I still say there's other ways you could have gone about doing this instead of doing it on a public event day. Maybe do it on one of those media days, like we had a media day for only media people on Friday, or better yet, that Wednesday and Thursday. I know for a fact that vendors had those 2 days to set up their booths. Lawrence DeMonico and Rare Breed Triggers could have shown up then and handed out those cease and desist letters when it was a little bit more private. But no, they chose to not do that. They chose to do it on the most public days possible. It's a joke. I just... And to top it off, this is a comment I actually got from... I don't want to show his name just because, you know, it's like... I don't want to get him in trouble. So bear with me. I'll see if I can just carefully hide his name, because I don't want him to get in trouble. I've got just up in the top left corner there. This is actually a guy who was trying to help me. He works for AS Designs, and he was trying to help me with sorting out the issues I was having with getting the ARC trigger to run in my PSA Jackal. But down here at the bottom, he said, funny enough, we got a cease and desist letter for the Jackal slip trip kit because, quote, it was designed only to work with the super safety, end quote, despite us intentionally adjusting the design to work with Rare Breed and Delta Team tactical cassettes. So that shows you how much certain companies actually read about or understand other FRT products before they pursue legal action. Okay? So this is what I'm talking about, guys. Like, Rare Breed is not really that kind of a company to deal with. You're kind of dealing with the devil. It's been kind of ridiculous, you know? Like, the whole thing has been ridiculous, and I look forward to the day that I guess I get my own cease and desist letter. But this is just stuff that I'm finding publicly available, you know? Guys, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. What do you think? I hope this helped clear some things up for you. It's not the best explanation I could have given, but I tried my best with a little bit of time I had here available tonight. So we will see you next time.